You know that feeling, right? You have an experience that's so profound, so intense, that words just fail you. You try to explain it, but what comes out is just a pale, blurry snapshot of what was happening inside your head. We're all walking around in these incredibly rich, private worlds, but we can't really share them. But what if we could? What if we could transmit the experience itself?
I want you to imagine you're standing on a cliff overlooking the Adriatic Sea. The sun is setting, you can smell the pine and salt in the air, and there's this just incredible sense of peace. You turn to someone you love and you say, "Wow, the sunset was beautiful." But that sentence, it doesn't carry the warmth of the sun on your skin or the sound of the waves. They can't truly feel what you felt. This exact problem, this huge gap between our experiences and our language, is what a new concept called the Experience Semantic Protocol, or ESP, is trying to solve.
And the scale of this problem, when you put numbers to it, it's staggering. Our minds are processing information at roughly 1,000,000 bits per second. But the second we try to use language to communicate, that bandwidth just plummets to maybe 50 bits per second. That's a compression loss of over 99.99%. The source material calls this catastrophic compression, and honestly, it's the perfect way to describe it. We are losing almost everything in translation.
And look, this is not a new problem. You could argue that the entire history of human communication has been one long, drawn-out battle against this bandwidth limit. We've been constantly trying to close that gap between what we experience and what we can actually share.
I mean, think about the journey. We started with oral traditions, where knowledge was incredibly fragile. Then the written word came along and made it permanent. The internet connected us all globally, and now large language models are starting to understand the meaning behind our words. But do you see the pattern here? Every single one of these steps was an improvement in how we share symbols about an experience. Not one of them could transmit the experience itself, and that is the fundamental game-changing leap that ESP is proposing. So, how in the world could this possibly work, right? How do you take something as messy, as personal, as complex as a human experience and make it transmissible? Well, the proposed answer is to deconstruct it, to break it down into its most basic fundamental parts.
And the core idea here is built on a really powerful analogy from biology. Think about DNA. The incredible, mind-boggling complexity of all life on Earth is encoded in just 4 simple chemical bases. So the ESP protocol asks a similar question. What are the fundamental bases of an experience? If we can figure out those building blocks, maybe, just maybe, we can encode and transmit them too.
Okay, so at the technical heart of this is a concept called TAOSS. Now, I know that sounds incredibly complex, but the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. It's basically a mathematical way of separating a single experience into different distinct categories. And this is the crucial part. The system imposes this structure to make sharing useful and safe. It's not saying that these neat little boxes actually exist in the brain. It's an engineering solution for a communication problem.
So this method gives us 6 proposed bases for our experiential genome. You've got KNO for knowledge, the raw facts, INT for your intention, your goals, EMO for emotion, pretty self-explanatory, CTX for context, the where, the when, the who you were with, SEN for the raw sensory data, sights, sounds, smells, and finally TEM for the temporal flow of it all, the rhythm. The moment you can break an experience down like this, you can actually start to manage it.
Okay, I know what you're probably thinking right now. This sounds incredibly powerful, and also maybe a little terrifying. And you're right to think that. That is exactly why the designers of this protocol built it from the absolute ground up with privacy and consent as its foundation. It's not an add-on, it's the whole point.
And this is the practical magic of TAOSS. Because the experience is broken into these types, you can choose exactly what to share. So a surgeon could transmit the pure muscle memory of a procedure, the feel of the tools, without sharing their own personal anxiety. A teacher could share their deep intuitive understanding of a subject without also transmitting their stress about a pop quiz. You get total, fine-grained control.
The safety mechanisms themselves are designed to be really robust. For example, the emotion channel is masked by default. You have to actively choose to share how you're feeling. Every single transmission requires a cryptographic signature of consent. There's even a revocation protocol, basically a panic button to instantly and verifiably cut the connection. It is all about giving you, the user, complete control.
So, with safety as the bedrock, we can start to explore the truly world-changing applications. How could a technology like this actually impact the way we learn, the art we create, and the way we work together?
Let's start with learning a complex skill. A master surgeon develops a certain feel for their craft over decades. It's that intuition that's almost impossible to describe with words. But with ESP, a trainee could, in theory, receive the experience vectors of that feel, the subtle resistance of tissue, the intuitive timing. Can you imagine condensing 30 years of deep, embodied learning into just a fraction of that time?
Or think about art and entertainment. A filmmaker could transmit their intended emotional arc directly to you. You wouldn't just watch a sci-fi movie, you could actually feel the bone-chilling cold of deep space. You wouldn't just see a confusing dream sequence, you'd experience the actual, genuine disorientation. It would transform media from something you watch into something you feel.
And for collaboration, the potential is just immense. Imagine a team of scientists or engineers trying to tackle a really complex problem. Instead of spending hours and hours in meetings just trying to get on the same page, they could share their mental models, their intentions, and their contextual understanding directly. This could unlock a whole new level of collective intelligence.
Now, everything we've talked about so far has been about real-time transmission, sharing from one person to another. But what happens when you can store these experiences? This is where the vision gets even bigger, and it starts to hint at the dawn of a completely new form of communication.
This leads to the concept of a Hive memory. Now, let's be clear, this is not a Borg-like collective mud. Think of it more like a decentralized, incredibly secure library. Individuals could choose to store their experiences in these encrypted capsules. Then, with explicit consent, these could be accessed or even combined, creating this shared, searchable pool of human experience.
Which brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? For all of human history, we have communicated with symbols about things. We talk about the sunset. But if we can start exchanging the experience of the sunset itself, are we witnessing the very beginning of post-linguistic communication? A fundamental shift in how we connect, how we learn, and maybe even how we evolve as a species.
And that's the final crucial point here. The protocol doesn't have to be perfect. As the source material puts it so well, even imperfect experience transfer obsoletes perfect language. Even getting a small fraction of a real experience across would be infinitely richer than the best words we have now. This is a technology that could redefine what it means to truly, deeply understand one another. And that, well, that's a future that's absolutely worth thinking about.